is just a brief review of the recent major events that are occurring across much of the north, particularly the east of Australia, to do with the current high energy period that began from the 18th of March. Now, we're seeing a lot of record flooding through the Queensland interior, extensive rain across much of Queensland, now extending into New South Wales, a highly active monsoon trough to the north, and several tropical features. Record rain's been recorded across northeast Queensland, particularly the Townsville region, one of the wettest marshes on record. This follows very wet events through February and December of the end of last year. The current feature is dominated by a large upper trough interacting with the monsoon and deep easterly flow from the Coral Sea, which is supportive of a La Nina-like pattern across the Pacific Ocean. There's two tropical lows. The one to the west is Tropical Cyclone Courtney, currently Category 3, moving away from Australia. And there's a second tropical low forming near the Kimberley there, which may form into Cyclone Diane, however, it's unlikely. If we look at the long-range forecast maps for this period, I did identify a tropical low to form about the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf, while a tropical low formed about the Gulf of Carpentaria region. Both of these features being the dominant features from week 3 onwards, with the Gulf feature taking a track into the interior. There was an option for it to move out into the Coral Sea before recurving. We can see that from the future progress map. However, the dominant track was through the interior, and that was highlighted by these extreme rainfall predictions of 1 to 300 millimetres due to slow moving tropical moisture from the north. This forecast was released on the 27th of September 2024, and this goes to show that these major events are predictable well ahead of computer models and conventional forecasting methods. The current feature was expected to progress into the end of March and possibly early April, where we expect extended rainfall into week 1 associated with a renewed trough in the northeast and tropical events to the northwest. That northwestern signal could be this feature here that's forming now, or this could be the remnants of the initial energy phase that saw Courtney forming. I did expect the tropical feature to the northwest to track along the west coast. However, obviously it's moving away to the west, away from the mainland, and that was mostly due to the strong signal towards rainfall, and that's supportive of why we got so much rainfall in the east. And with that in mind, these extensive rainfall events are forecast and happening as I expected, and they're not unusual despite what we might hear online and through social media groups. So yeah, that's just a bit of a recap with the long range forecasts compared to current events. I'll attach some rainfall maps to the end of this video just to show how the rainfall has fallen, within the scope of these maps, where generally falling from the Broome region south to Victoria and across the Greater East, with a focus through the central interior of Queensland and to some extent through New South Wales. This New South Wales rainfall is probably of low probability now, just due to the way the system's progressed. However, this rainfall through the Queensland interior has played out quite closely to the forecast expectations. So this is the weekly rainfall totals, courtesy of the Bureau of Meteorology's data, and this just shows the build-up of rainfall, particularly from the 18th onwards, where I was forecasting this major cycle to occur. So we did see a build-up of rain leading into this period. So if we go back to, within the week before that, we see there was rain building along the northeast coast, and the build-up of the monsoon was occurring from about mid-month. This rain was associated with the earlier in March event, and then there was rain through eastern Queensland, which was to do with this was Cyclone Alfred, which was in the previous energy period. For those who follow would have known that forecast came out quite well as well, where we got the landfall. We were one day off on the landfall date. However, the location it crossed was quite close to the geographical location. But going back to the current major weather period, if we go forward to the 18th, 18th of March, you'll see these dates in here. You'll see rainfall begins to really ramp up from about the 16th, and then 17th, 18th, we start seeing these huge totals building through the interior. So again, this is in line with that major cycle kicking off from the 18th, extending through to the end of the month and into early April. So if we scroll through these rainfall totals to the present day, which is the 28th, we can see that, there's been widespread, 100 to 5 to 600 mils plus through large parts of interior Queensland. And again, if we go to these long-range maps, which are hand drawn, we can see that the focus of the rainfall, if we can just zoom this up a bit, was through that southern Queensland interior, sort of through the Channel Country in the southwest, and that's sort of where that bulk of the rainfall fell. And that was due to the path of that slow-moving low that's still in operation through the interior there. And then that rain is slowly beginning to progress further south into New South Wales as I speak, although it's unlikely we see these types of extreme falls into New South Wales. We may see 50 to 100 mils at best. If we're lucky, we might see some isolated pockets of heavier falls. But again, you can see the general spread of rain goes from that Broome region through South Australia, and eventually it should come down through to Victoria there. Once this system pops down further south, we should see this rain band fall down through at least into the central parts of Victoria. And we'll go to the rainfall progression after this clip just to show how this event should mature and finalise into the end of the month, into early April. So there's still a good week left of rainfall for large parts of the east, interior, north, and parts of the west. So while this system may move offshore in the short term, this extended wet period does last into early April. So I'll show you a quick clip of what's likely to come next in the next slide. This is just a very basic outlook on the progression of this system. So it's not a general rainfall forecast for your location. So if this particular model run doesn't show rain for your location, that's just a technicality. This is merely to show how this system is going to mature and the future upcoming events. So use it as a guide, not for specific data. So currently we've got the low through southwest Queensland, shifting into northern New South Wales. Broad rain areas across most of Queensland, shifting into southern and central New South Wales. Monsoon trough across the north, and this low pressure system here is possibly tropical cyclone Diane, but more likely to be just a tropical low. If we just click through this model, we're going to see the future progression of how this rainfall will persist into April, in line again with the long range forecast of extended rainfall. So if we go into, this is Sunday, we're going to just skip through it quickly. Excuse the loading of the models. We see by the weekend, this low pressure system's moving out into the Tasman Sea, about the Hunter south to the Illawarra coast. There may be a secondary low move offshore about the Wide Bay, but it's more likely just to be a combined trough rather than individual low pressure systems at this stage. Any low pressure system that does form will be a dominant Tasman low, and any trough will merge into the one circulation. So this will see a general clearing into early next week. But then we have this low over in northwest Western Australia, which will then shift back across the interior and pull another surge of monsoonal type rainfall across much of the north and across into the east once again into April. So we're going to click through these models and let them load. The internet's not very good here when we have storms, unfortunately. This is the 1st of April. So again, we can sort of skip back to get it to, once it's loaded, to play properly. We see that low moving into the interior and renewed rainfall widespread across most of the Northern Territory, the northern South Australia, again across most of Queensland. So we're expecting another trough type feature, possibly a low pressure system to form about the northeast of Queensland, possibly in the far north, tracking along the northeast coast, which will probably be associated with this later monsoonal surge. So again, if we skip through, let the model load for a second, we can backtrack this now. We see that there's widespread rain across the greater east of the country into northern New South Wales, and again, and that low pressure system moves offshore. This is the remnant low that formed off the Kimberley as I speak today on the 28th of March. So this is the 3rd of April. Again, this is the extensive rain that developed from the 18th of March and continues into week 1 of April that I've been speaking of for several months now. But what's interesting to see towards the end of this is there is another low pressure system that does form towards week 2 of April about the northeast coast, which is probably the same signal that I'm expecting in week 1. So you'll see a low pressure system begin to form up here towards PNG there. This is forming into week 2. That's it there. This may be inaccurate with the models, and it may form closer to late week 1. So just be aware of this, and this is the one I expect to possibly roll down the coast, which should be a part of this last event into the end of week 1 of April. So if we click through to the end of this model run, we see there's a bit of a low pressure system up there. There's also a broad trough along the east coast. So this is probably the one feature. So expect any sort of a trough or low pressure system to sweep south along the coast into the end of week 1, possibly early week 2, but generally wet across northern Queensland, eastern Queensland into at least the end of week 1 of April. And then just for the cherry on top, so you can see this little low pressure system here is likely to be the trough that forms up here in early week 1. And if we look at the map for week 1, we can see this trough low here that we're expecting to form in week 1, and then we've got that late March feature there, which is possibly that as well. So these two signals are probably the same event, and we're expecting that to swing down the coast towards the Wide Bay, possibly by the early week 2 there. And then if we look at the accumulated rainfall, again, use this as a guide, don't take it as gospel, and this is supported by several different models. Extensive rainfall does continue for large parts of the north and greater east well into early April. And these are accumulated totals. This model only maxes out at 300. So if it's showing 200 to 300 mils, particularly for the northeast, we can probably double that for a lot of these locations. And this is on top of the rain we've just had. So don't put the umbrellas away just yet. There's plenty more to come. And then again in week 4, there should be one last trough for the northeast coast of Queensland before the wet season finally retreats for another year. So there you have it. That's a general recap of this current event, plus a bit of information on what's yet to come. So feel free to share this, get the word out that there's plenty more rainfall to come. And if you want to know when these events are going to occur ahead of the models, and ahead of all the groups and the chats and social media circles, head to the website. We have forecasts out to June, and over the next few weeks we'll be extending the forecast out to September 2025 to identify all the major features.